Oh, today I'll be talking about 10 great rock/metal albums from the year 1996. Many albums to choose from, but I decided to randomly select these 10 albums, which are going to be in no particular order. But yeah, of course, if you can think of more albums, definitely let me know what those albums are in the comment section below. But yeah, let's go ahead and dive into it. Let's start off with Corrosion of Conformity with their album Wise Blood. So yeah, when I was coming up with ideas for which albums to have for this video, this was one of the first albums that came to mind. I mean, definitely a pretty great album and also one of the band's best, I'd say. But some of my favorites, Long Whip, Big America, the title track, Drowning in a Daydream, which is, of course, the big song on the album. Fuel, which is maybe one of their fastest songs that they've done. Also, one of the heavier songs on the album, too. Man or Ash and The Door are also really good songs on the album. But yeah, if you haven't heard this album, definitely check it out, especially if you're a fan of 90s metal. And let's go ahead and move on to something a bit more extreme and also darker, and that is Cradle of Filth with their album Dusk in Her Embrace. Out of their 90s albums, this one is probably my favorite. This is probably a top 3 Cradle of Filth album for me. This album and Midian. Midian's probably my favorite Cradle of Filth album, but this album might be my second favorite, maybe. But either way, definitely a really strong album from the band, and I'm sure many people would agree with me that this is at least one of their best. But some of my favorites on here, which are also maybe some of my favorite Cradle of Filth songs, A Gothic Romance, Beauty Slept in Sodom. That's always been one of my favorites off the album ever since I heard this album for the first time. Really like that song. The title track is another favorite of mine on the album. But yeah, overall, a really good album from Cradle of Filth. And again, definitely one of the band's best. Next, we'll be moving to some melodic death metal with a classic in the genre, and that is The Jester Race by In Flames. Often considered their best or one of their best. For me, one of their best. Horacle is my number one when it comes to In Flames, but this would be in close second. I mean, again, definitely a classic in melodic death metal. I mean, Artifacts of the Black Rain, which is one of the fan favorites on here, is also one of my personal favorites on the album. Moonshield, probably one of my favorite songs from In Flames. I'd maybe say the same thing for Lord Hypnos. I really like that song a lot. Definitely one of my favorites on the album. Dead Eternity is another highlight for me off the album. December Flower is a song that's grown to be one of my favorites on the album also. But yeah, all around, really good album from In Flames. Maybe one or two skippable songs on here, but besides that, still definitely a pretty strong album from the band, and again, definitely one of their best. Next, we'll be moving to a band that I feel is pretty underrated, and I've mentioned that before with other times I've mentioned this band and a few other videos that I've done, but I'm talking about King's X with their album Ear Candy. So with this album, their label or record company, however you want to put it, they pressured them to go in a more commercial direction. They wanted the band to put out some hits or have a hit, however you want to put it, but so yeah, this album is a bit more melodic for them, a bit more commercial leaning, and some fans are on board with it. Some people like it, while other fans are not too big on it. For me, I like this album. Not their best album. I mean, for me, their best albums are probably Gretchen Goes to Nebraska, the self-titled, and Dogman. Those albums for me are the band's best, but this album is another pretty good album from the band. Again, not their best, but still, I'd say great all around. I mean, some of my favorites on here: The Train, A Box, Lies in the Sand is another favorite of mine on the album. I really like the album closer, Life Going By, which is one of the more melodic songs on here. I really like that song a lot, especially Ty's vocals in that song. But yeah, there's maybe a couple songs on here that are maybe skippable, but there's really nothing bad here on the album. Overall, pretty good album from the band, and if you haven't heard this album, definitely check it out. But if you're getting into King's X, I'd probably say don't start with this album. I'd say start with probably their album Gretchen Goes to Nebraska, either that album or their album Dogman, which is maybe their heaviest. But yeah, great album from King's X. Again, not their best, but still pretty good. But next we'll be moving to one of the pioneers of nu metal, Korn, with their second album, Life is Peachy. And yeah, really great album. Also, I'd say one of the band's best. Some of my favorites, Chi. You also have some pretty underrated songs on here, like Swallow and No Place to Hide. I think it's the song that's somewhat kind of underrated on the album. Same with the song Lost. Mr. Rogers is another song that I enjoy off the album. I don't know if it's one of my favorites, but still pretty good song. Of course, you have the big song on here, Adidas, or Adidas. That's of course the big song on here, and of course one of the highlights off the album, I'd say. I do like the cover of Wicked, of course originally done by Ice Cube, and of course that song features Chino Moreno from Deftones, another great band. But yeah, really great album from Korn, and an album that definitely had to be in this video for sure. Next we'll be moving to one of the biggest bands of the 90s, especially in the world of metal, and that is Pantera with the great Southern Trendkill. Can maybe make the argument that this is maybe their darkest album. Especially, you can definitely hear it with certain songs on here, especially like the Suicide Note songs, parts 1 and 2, and the song Floods. Floods is probably one of my favorite Pantera songs. I mean, the guitar work, the solo especially, all that alone makes it one of the best Pantera songs in my opinion. War Nerve to me has some pretty killer riffs from Dime. I also dig his killer riffs in Living Through Me, Hell's Wrath. That song is not one of my favorites on here, but still a really good song. Drag the Waters, which is one of the bigger songs on the album. I think that's another highlight off the album. But yeah, either this album or Far Beyond Driven would have to be at least Pantera's heaviest. But yeah, still definitely a great album from Pantera. Now we'll be moving to Sepultura with their album Roots. Now, this album's not for every fan. Of course, with this album, they went in a bit of a more nu metal direction, which is part of the reason why not every fan is on board with this album. It was produced by Ross Robinson, who is, of course, a big name when it comes to the world of nu metal. But some of my favorites, of course, Roots, Bloody Roots, which is maybe one of their biggest songs, maybe their biggest. Attitude is also pretty good. I think the album starts out really strong with those first 4 songs. It is one of those albums where I'd say the first half is easily or more obviously the stronger half, while the second half is clearly not as strong. But still, I do like the second half though. Look Away and Dusted are some songs that I enjoy off the second half. But yeah, pretty good album from Sepultura. Not my favorite Sepultura album. I probably do like Chaos ID and Beneath the Remains and Arise a lot more than this, but still, really good album from Sepultura. But next we'll be moving to some grunge with Tiny Music from Stone Temple Pilots. So this was an album that took me a little bit to grow on me, because first few listens of this, I just wasn't really into it. I liked a couple songs, but the album just wasn't really doing it for me. But I've grown to like it much, much more over time, and yeah, this is probably my 3rd or 4th favorite Stone Temple Pilots album. But yeah, great album from Stone Temple Pilots. I mean, I think the singles on here are especially really good, such as Big Bang Baby and Lady Picture Show. But even the lesser known songs on here, or some of them, I think are really good, like Pop's Love Suicide and Tumble in the Rough and Ride the Cliche, just to name a few songs. But yeah, great album from Stone Temple Pilots. Again, not my favorite. I do like Core and Purple more. Purple probably being my favorite album by these guys, but still, overall, a good album from Stone Temple Pilots. Next we'll be moving to Tool with Anima. And this was another album that, one of the first few albums that instantly came to mind when thinking of albums for this video. I mean, definitely one of the band's best, and I'm sure many fans would agree with me on that. Honestly, those first 3 albums kind of fight for being my favorite album. Undertow, Anima, and Lateralis. For the longest time, Lateralis was my favorite, but nowadays, honestly, those first 3 albums, again, fight for being my number 1. But this album, definitely really good. I mean, some of my favorites, Anima, H, Stinkfist, and of course many others. Eulogy, that's another song that comes to mind that's probably another favorite of mine off the album. But yeah, Tool, Anima, definitely an album that had to make my video, make my list. And now for the final album for this video, we got Type O Negative with October Rust. So yeah, a bit more melodic compared to the album that came before it, Bloody Kisses, but still one of the band's best, I'd say. And it also has some of my favorite Type O Negative songs like Love You to Death and Be My Druidess. You get some pretty interesting stuff towards the second half. I think Wolf Moon is a really good song, definitely one of the highlights off the album for me. I do like their song Cinnamon Girl. My Girlfriend's Girlfriend is another pretty good song off the album, which is of course also one of the big songs off the album. But yeah, all around, really good Type O Negative album. And a great follow-up to Bloody Kisses, I'd say, because Bloody Kisses is probably my favorite Type O Negative album, but this album would probably be in a close second. But yeah, October Rust by Type O Negative, really great album. But yeah, those are 10 great rock/metal albums from the year 1996. Let me know if you can think of more albums in the comment section below. Let me know your thoughts on the albums that I talked about here and all the good stuff. But anyways, thanks for watching. Please leave a comment and like, subscribe. Have a nice day and take care.